Imagine this. You spend months, maybe even years, gathering medical records, filling out form after form, and just pouring your heart out about how your life has changed, only to get a cold form letter denial in the mail. For millions of Americans, that isn't just a bad dream. It's the reality of applying for Social Security disability. But it doesn't have to be your reality. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this whole process and show you how to sidestep the common traps that lead to that denial letter. 65%? I mean, that number is a real punch to the gut, especially when you're already struggling with a disability. It means that nearly 2 out of every 3 people who apply get turned down on their first try. But look, don't let that number scare you. Instead, let's use it, because by understanding why so many applications fail, you can build a much stronger case from the get-go and seriously boost your chances of success.
So, what's the deal? Why are so many people who are genuinely unable to work getting denied? Well, here's the secret. It's almost never because the government thinks people are faking it. The real reason is that the system is looking for a very, very specific kind of proof, and most people just don't know what that is. It comes down to technicalities, and we're about to break down that code for you.
You know, when you apply for disability, it really feels like you're just throwing your life story into this giant black box. You send in this mountain of paperwork, all your medical records, your work history, really personal stuff. And then you wait, and you wait. For months, it feels like it's all just disappeared, only for that denial to pop out. But what if I told you there's a logic to it all? Let's crack open that black box together.
Look, it makes total sense that you see your disability as a medical problem. Of course you do. You're the one living with the pain and the limitations every single day. But here's the critical thing you have to understand. The Social Security Administration, or SSA, sees it completely differently. For them, it's not a medical problem. It's a legal question. They're asking, can you prove with objective evidence that you can't do any kind of substantial work available in the national economy? And that one little word, any, is where everything gets complicated.
Let's make this real. Imagine a guy, we'll call him John. He's been a construction worker his whole life, has a terrible back injury. His doctor's notes are full of phrases like extreme pain, but he gets denied. So why? Well, the examiner who reviewed his case basically said, look, we don't doubt he's in pain, but just because he can't lift heavy things anymore, there's no proof in this file that he couldn't do a sit-down job, like answering phones.
And this right here, this is what we call the symptom versus evidence trap. It's probably the single biggest reason claims fail. See, the SSA doesn't make decisions based on your symptoms, like pain. They make decisions based on your functional limitations. So they don't want to just hear, my back hurts. They need to see objective evidence that says, I cannot lift more than 5 pounds, or I cannot stand for more than 15 minutes without a break. Those are the details that win cases. All right, so we've talked a lot about the problem. Let's get to the solution. Beating those odds and getting your application approved is all about building a rock-solid case from day one. And the best way to do that is to have a game plan, a checklist, to make sure you're gathering exactly what the SSA needs to see. Think of this as your roadmap. Step 1, get your ID together. Sounds basic, right? But you'd be shocked how many applications get held up over simple missing documents. Step 2, and this is a huge one, make a master list of every single doctor, hospital, clinic, or therapist you've seen. Get their names, addresses, and the dates you were there. The more detail, the better. Step 3, your work history for the last 5 years. What did you do and what were the physical demands? Be specific. Step 4, file accurately. Don't leave any blanks. And finally, step 5, and this is a powerful one, get statements from other people, a former boss, a family member who helps care for you, who can describe your struggles. That stuff can be gold. Okay, now before we even get into the weeds on the medical stuff, there's a big financial hurdle you have to clear right at the start. It's called Substantial Gainful Activity, or SGA. And really, it's just the government's fancy way of saying if you're working and earning over a certain amount of money each month, they're going to assume you're not disabled. It doesn't matter what your diagnosis is. If you're over the income limit, you'll probably get an automatic denial. Now, this income limit changes pretty much every year, so it is absolutely critical that you check the Social Security Administration's website to see what the number is for the current year. And I'm telling you, this is a hard, non-negotiable line in the sand. If your average monthly earnings are even $1 single over that limit, your application can be denied before anyone ever even glances at your medical records. Okay, so you've cleared those first 2 hurdles, the technical paperwork and the financial limits. Now we get to the absolute heart of your claim, the medical evidence. This is where you have to learn to translate your personal story of pain and struggle into the cold, hard legal facts that the examiner at Disability Determination Services needs to see to approve your case.
And listen, I get it. It is so frustrating when you feel like your doctor's notes just don't capture what you're really going through. But the SSA isn't looking for a story. They're looking for data. A note that says patient has back pain is basically useless to them. But a note that says patient cannot stand for more than 15 minutes or cannot lift more than 5 pounds, that is concrete, measurable evidence. You have to talk to your doctor and ask them to document your limitations in these specific terms.
And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. The waiting is awful. It's often the hardest part. After you hit submit on that application, it can take 6 to 9 months, sometimes even longer, just to get that first decision. Why so long? Well, a big part of it is the time it takes the examiner to track down all your medical records from all those different places. And that's exactly why being super organized with that provider list we talked about is so important. So, what if you do everything right? You wait all those long months, and you still get that dreaded denial letter in the mail? First things first, do not panic. I know it's devastating, but a denial is not the end of the road, not even close. For a lot of people, it's just part of the process. In fact, many cases are won on appeal. But what you do next is absolutely critical.
When you get that denial, your gut reaction might be to just give up and start all over with a fresh application. That is the single biggest mistake you can possibly make. You must appeal the decision. Let me say that again because it's that important. Appeal. Don't refile. Starting over can cost you dearly.
So why is appealing such a big deal? Well, a few huge reasons. First, when you appeal, you protect your original application date. This is everything. It means if you're eventually approved, you could get back pay all the way to that first date. If you start over, you lose all that potential money. Second, an appeal moves you forward in the system, not backward. It gets you closer to a hearing in front of a judge where you get to tell your story in person. And honestly, the approval rates at the hearing level are often way higher. So as we wrap this up, I want you to think about this one last question. This whole Social Security disability process, it's not a test of how sick you are, and it's definitely not a judgment on your character. It's a communication challenge. The key is learning to speak the language the SSA understands. By translating your medical story into the specific, measurable, legal evidence the system needs, you take control of your claim. You can turn a likely denial into a life-changing approval. So please, don't give up. You can do this.